Right, we're back again. We're here at British Library. This is one of the few venues in central London where it's quiet enough, though you'll hear the occasional siren go by and the occasional motorcycle.
Yeah, when they're late for their lunch.
People are around, sitting around, listening to us while we're here. All right, this is what I want to go to now is back when you started coming in 2019,
something like that.
You came before that, but you started coming regularly in 2019, because I remember before I left, I met you. And when you started coming, what was it that, I assume you started coming just to talk to people about anything, but you started moving over into the Islamic world. Why? What was it that moved you into the Islamic world?
Okay, that's not quite accurate, actually. I assumed I would be polemicizing. Well, so I wanted to speak to Hebrew Israelites initially.
Explain who you're talking about.
Okay, so there are certain sects or cults, or like a black identitarian Nation of Islam with the Bible. Think of it that way. They started in the 60s, some of them at the turn of the century, but because they used the Bible, I thought that's good, because we're both already versed, and I won't say well versed because I'm including other people, but versed in the scripture. And I'd read the Quran, and like, I have to be honest, it made me feel nauseous.
Muslims, but these are Afro-Caribbean, Afro-American.
Yes, that was my intent. But what I mainly wanted to do was help with the commission. So and I knew that it was predominantly Islamic, and I was going to say luckily, but it's not. God's plan for me has been that everything I've ever studied or in my personal life has come to benefit me within my discussions. So I'd read the Quran. It made me feel a little bit sick when I realised that, because before I had a liberalised view that Allah must be God and it's just all wrong. Like, because there is only one God, I reasoned to myself. So I didn't think of Satan with his small g. Like, I was thinking there is only one God, so maybe they've just got it all utterly wrong. And but it's a genuine attempt to, And when I read it and I realised that it not only was like nonsensical in as much as, not compared to itself, although it is, when compared to the Bible. Allah is saying, I am Yahweh, but he never mentions the name Yahweh, and he's forgotten, and he contradicts himself, etc. And when I saw how Jesus was betrayed, and I felt desperately sad that there are people truly believing that they love Jesus, even though they're Muslim, and yet they don't know Jesus at all. And it's this other dude who, was making clay birds and talking in the cradle. And then I saw the stories are lifted from other sources, and I thought, what, Jibril couldn't just nip down, like he had to go off and find these texts, these apocryphal, like heretical stuff. So I always liked arguing, even when I wasn't as strong. I would argue from the vantage point of Islam if I was speaking to a crit, just for the sake of debate / argument. So yeah, I already had a background, a grounding in Islam theologically, or polemicizing it in my personal life. And that I feel like at the time when someone was trying to convince me of the truth of it and potentially have me convert to Islam, I was sort of chatting to God, like, why do I have to keep having these circular like, it doesn't seem fruitful. And yet it all came to bear that when I walked into Speaker's Corner, I thought, oh my gosh, this is easy, because I'd had one-on-one intense, like a persuasion. So, and I'd already defended myself utterly against that, and then grounded myself again in Christ. So I felt ready to take on. The very first time I walked in with a view to beginning to fulfill the promise I'd made to God, was I saw Asif, who's an Indian Christian, surrounded by heckling, baying young men who were Muslim, and they were, like using racial body language and like mocking him because he's an Indian, talking to him as if he's a Hindu, like bringing up cows, and I don't know.
He's just a fellow with
white hair. Yes, he's
older gentleman.
Yes, he's lovely. He's very loud also, very loud. So without really thinking too much, I just went into the circle and stood with him, and then just deflected some of the attention away from him. And someone said, wow, in the Bible, and I just got my Bible out, and then that was the beginning of that. And it just happened to be a Muslim who engaged me the very first time that I was there for a debate. So Yeah, and then the Hebrew Israelites was patchy in their attendance. I feel that sometimes maybe they're being held in a cycle. I don't know why they don't turn up, but they were very aggressive. Just a couple of them. I had a man, accuse me of all sorts of stuff just because of the colour of my skin, and he was being held physically back. So the first aggression that I directly experienced was from a Hebrew Israelite. But if they don't have the right God, I'll talk to whoever it is.
The Hebrew Israelites, just so people take the position that when you look at the Bible, you read it through black eyes. So everything happens in Africa. So all of the traditional people that we see in the Bible, all the prophets, they were all African.
Oh, yep.
So they were all Afro.
So was King James, apparently, according to some of the...
Yeah, so they switch everything back down to that continent, so that understand true
with a heavy focus on the Old Testament and the enemies as footstools, and just violent and persecuted because they believe they are the true Jews.
They are the true Jews.
And that the actual Jews are imposters and...
Right.
And
so
stuff
they
like that.
received the covenant from God.
And there are some because there are different camps with vastly differing theologies. I mean, One West, I think, was one of the first modern iterations. American, I won't say if I think that means they're more crazy or not, but yeah, some of them think that Joseph is actually Jesus' dad. Some of them don't. Some of them think that you could be white and a real Israelite. Because I remember David Wood, one of them said to him, well, you can beatbox. And because Sam Shamoon could do he knew a lot about Bruce Lee. They said, yeah, Bruce Lee, he's an Israelite. Because I was like, you're making it up. So there are some very aggressive and violently ideological members, and there are others that just are sort of sheeple in the background with the Flintstones clothes on.
They don't have large followings. They don't really have much that can support.
Oh no, they have copy-pasted. They have like sections of the Bible, but you can't read before and you can't read after.
Yeah, right.
It's just sound bites. Yeah.
Then that's what support. And I think sometimes Christians can do the same thing. We're guilty
certainly.
of that.
Yeah.
It's just
even if you have to stop halfway through the verse to support your own stuff.
Say, if you can read all of the context, then we'll have a conversation. Now, getting back to Islam, so the Muslims attracted you at some point because they engaged with you. You found that they were more engaging.
Do you mean prior to going to Speaker's Corner?
When you started with Asif, they were the
I see. Well, I wouldn't say attracted me. They repulsed me with their treatment of Asif, and I just wanted to defend him because I wasn't used to it. I didn't realise that I won't say enjoys, but he is supremely indifferent to the baying, heckling mobs around him. He feeds off of the fact that, well, they're close to him and he is foghorning Jesus at them,
That's actually very Indian.
Yeah.
It's very cultural. And I grew up in it, so I love it myself. Not love it, but I have no problem with it. I enjoy being in third-class railway carriages. I would always have to take on everybody because I was the only American. They hated Americans because we supported Pakistan.
A vast array of reasons, probably.
I had no reason to support America, but my accent gave me away. But I'd have to take them on, and the better I took them on, the more tea they would provide me with. So it was
entertainment value as well.
At the same time. Okay, so you kind of moved into you kind of fell into the Islamic world.
Well, no, the Islamic world migrated to London. Like I'd grown up when I was.
But you were not engaging with Muslims.
No, I was. Yeah, I had
all
friends
the way through.
all through my life.
Okay.
From my school. I mean, when I was at school, back in the 18th century, it was like very few people of vastly different, like obviously different faiths, and there was an orchestrated move towards tolerance, inclusion, and stuff like that. But somewhere along the way, it became disingenuous, and nowadays it's a religion of peace when it's it's this double speak thing.
Well, it never was prior to 2001.
It never was, but I'm saying it was like dishonestly portrayed as such, whereas before it may have been compassionately. The people may have been ignorant of it.
In the 1990s, I never heard anybody say it's a religion of peace. After 9/11,
no, sorry, I don't mean that slogan.
The narrative changed overnight.
Yeah, I don't mean that slogan. I mean, there were, like you said, there were less polemics because less people had bothered to read the Quran and see that it says fight them, whether you want to fight them, slay them, cut them up. So, like, if you've read that, and then you hear people who you suspect have read that, saying, oh, well, it's all the same God and we're all just getting along, and you think, not so much.
No.
So yeah, when I was at school, there were far less Muslims, but they were, I was friends with them, and increasingly areas of London have become more so populated with Muslims. So I had nothing of it was new to me apart from the approach. I'd seen aggression and Sharia patrols and things of that nature, but never consistent, or just the odd story about it, and then it would kind of fizzle out. But at Speaker's Corner, I realised quite quickly that was it was a regular attitude of, not all of the Muslims certainly, but superiority and entitlement to polemics. Because you mentioned before attacks on Christianity, and why are they attacking Christianity in your time there? Because you were so few anyway, and the darkness doesn't like the light. And the truth, I've always think it that there was a political party in Britain called the Monster Raving Loony Party, and they were off key, but well known and sort of jokish, but nobody went crazy and you can't say that, because it's so clearly laughable. And I could do that with Islam, but it's taking people to hell. So the truth hurts, and the truth angers people. And Jesus said, I was hated first and you will be. And that includes Christianity. It's people don't respond well to being told that they are condemned by their own actions.
Understood. All right, so...
Oh yeah, I'm teaching my grandmother at the moment to suck eggs as well. Sorry, I'm explaining it to you as if you don't get it.
By default, Islam kind of took over and has. So the biggest, probably the biggest debates, the biggest discussion groups are always Christianity and Islam.
Certainly.
There are atheists there. Stephen, that's a good friend of yours, and you do engage with him at some point. They're the socialist, that guy that's always the socialist. He's always there. What has a funny name?
Dusty. No, Heiko. You mean Heiko? Yeah.
Heiko.
He's quite charming.
Actually, he is, and he's been there as long as I've been there.
Yes,
so
I've got a black and white photo of him as a very young man on a ladder as well. He likes the ladder.
He's very good on it, and he's very good at engaging the crowd.
Yes.
And he gives and takes, and the crowds are there generally. They stay for hours.
Definitely.
Because he holds their attention. He is what I would say is one of the old school.
Yes.
That's what Speaker's Corner used to be. That's what you remember. That's what you thought you were coming to when you first went to Speaker's Corner. You found it was much more of a free-for-all, in your face, a lot more agitation, a lot more aggression.
Yeah, recourse to violence that I didn't see prior to that.
Yeah. So Islam has taken over. Obviously, this is now, you almost have to be prepared for it, and you've learned an awful lot of new ideas. You've learned a lot more about Islam in the last 3 or 4 years that you've been there. What I want to do next is look at some ideas that you think are the good ones, the best one that you can think of, the best ones you come up with.
To polemicize.
In Islam.
Yep.
Working on it. But we'll bring this one down to a close because we're about 13 minutes into it. Just to kind of walk you through, as you have engaged in the last 3 or 4 years, what was it that pulled you into Islam? In this case, it wasn't by choice, it was by necessity. All right, this is Jay and Kay here at the British Library. Well, for now.
We're joking.
Okay. We were back here at the British Library. You can see the sign there behind us. People walk back and forth. You'll probably hear a siren or two being in central London, right off of Euston Road. And we're talking about Speaker's Corner, your experience at Speaker's Corner, and also the enormous amount of how that has impacted on your life. Speaker's Corner that only happens on Sundays. What I'd like to finish this whole series off, what I'd like to do is talk about some of the ideas that you've come across. So what are the best, if you can just stop and think, in the last 3 to 4 years, what are the best arguments you've heard?
Against Islam.
Against Islam, and also, what are the best arguments they've thrown at you against Christianity?
Okay.
So both apologetics and polemics.
Okay. Firstly, I'd say that I don't ever feel trepidation or anxiety when in a debate when they say, well, how about this Bible? But sometimes they look as if they have some resounding knockout argument, but I know that with context and just reading slightly before or after, or just knowing the verses, it can't be damaging to Christianity to read the Bible for a start.
Okay,
but,
so you always have your Bible with
their
you.
best arguments are usually self-refuting arguments if you look at them in a calm manner, maybe at home. If you were poring over it, you'd say, oh. But sometimes the high, like octane atmosphere, and that you're under pressure to answer. So
and their mannerisms, the fact that they're so aggressive, and
yes,
they say, we're going to
and
get you on this.
demanding and disingenuous. I mean, I'm very talkative, but you can be steamrollered, like literally verbally, kind of like machine gunned. And so even in a time debate, you're trying to answer their questions. By the time you've done that, your time's up and there's more questions.
Yeah,
So they're
and
never...
This is the shopping list tactic
Yes,
that they
yeah.
use. We call it shopping list. And it's always, if you can show me where Jesus says, I am God, I will become a Christian.
I can't, though.
Yeah.
I do it, and then they
That's
leave.
the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So that's why today
But they never
now-
become a Christian,
But see,
weirdly.
here's what's interesting. You can now, but could you when you first heard that?
I would have taken a more circuitous route. So one of the blessings for me, I mean, I'd read the Bible, and at school I did like a book study between two different books of the Bible, but that was many years prior, and I didn't really take religion too seriously at all. So I would have been able to, with like a half hour and a casual attitude and just flicking through, but I would have made a more complicated case. And I feel that now I'm able to go, I'm not brilliant at referencing. The Holy Spirit definitely brings up verses into my mind that I had forgotten, or I would hear the words and then maybe I have to search engine to find the reference. But that's inordinately useful, because by myself I'd be maybe thinking about lunch or something, I don't know. But
Just repeat that, so all of you can hear. The Holy Spirit gives her the right words.
Certainly.
He gives her that's actually comes straight out of Scripture.
all right,
That the Lord will give you the right words.
Yes, if you
you're
pray
in
for
the battle-
wisdom also,
If
yeah.
you're in the battle for Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit will infuse you with the right words, the right phraseology, even the right references.
God will fight for you, and you just need to be still. My tongue is still moving at the time, obviously, but yeah, that
Be
is
a ready tongue
that's,
in the
yes,
hand
that's
of a ready writer.
Always ready to give a defence. And I think the best piece of advice I would give to like aspiring polemicists or debaters is don't presuppose that the other person is genuinely wanting the answer, or it's going to change their... When they say, show me where he said I am God and worship, it doesn't... Even if they believed he had said it, they would still shy away from becoming a Christian.
And they've heard the answers many times.
Certainly.
So they're not really asking the question
No,
to learn
they
something.
want to catch you on the back foot to make you feel doubt, and then they
How can
can...
1 + 1 + 1 = 1?
Well, you just
Another
multiply
common-
it.
So you can see these are questions that initially people who have not used to
Oh,
working-
sorry, the other piece of advice would be don't be afraid to say, I don't know.
Give me a week.
I'll go and check and I'll come back
my
and
favourite
be
phrase.
genuinely do it, because it shows, it takes the need to just fill in blank space and guess, because you can do more damage, or you just make yourself seem a little foolish, because you may stumble on the right answer anyway. But it's best if you're not sure, and it's important enough that not the person, like we've already said, the people watching it can be damaging. It's not, you can make a mistake certainly, and it doesn't mean that Christianity is a mistake. It just means that on that day you made a mistake, because
didn't make a mistake. You didn't know the answer.
Yeah.
You're going to come back next week with the answer.
Yeah, no, sometimes I do make it. Sometimes I've heard myself, and it's not that I didn't mean how it sounded, but somehow I've been halfway through saying one thing, then caught onto another thing, and it just, people will say, were you saying that? And I'm like, no. But it just, my brain sometimes goes a little bit quicker than my mouth, or my mouth goes, so, yeah. I've watched
I
back,
think your
and
mouth goes quicker than your brain.
I've watched back videos from initially, and I don't actually accept what I'm saying now. I think, no, I've got a much better way of
Right. Okay. And that
delivering
comes from
that.
experience.
Yes.
I hope you're all hearing that. So you're admitting that there were times, and I remember my first few years when I was at Speaker's Corner, that was my favorite phrase. Give me a week.
Yes.
I have no idea. But next week, come back here, I'll have the answer, and you start building up your apologetics.
Yes. Yeah, you have a catalogue, as it were. You've got the Bible always, but by watching other Christian apologists and polemicists and debaters and reading and different articles and stuff like that, you start to build a stock catalogue of go-to verses even that support all of the main tenets of Christianity. You don't, for my personal opinion, like in terms of denominations, and I very rarely debate Christians, like in my personal life I do, but I don't find that it's as potentially beneficial for the commission, because I think there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ. I don't mean I won't be telling them, hey, but I had a vision once, literal one, and I could just see the kingdom of God like surrounded by, as it says in the Bible, like all manner of evil. Islam mainly, the thing that I saw, but I envisioned the Christians on the inside arguing about Nicaea, and I was like, oh, for God, they're banging the doors down, violently elbowing their way in, and we're like squabbling between ourselves. And I just find that really sad, because we're missing the opportunity to save, well, not personally, but assist someone's salvation and like being snatched from hell. And it's such a massive privilege and responsibility that we can get sidelined in ego and wanting to be right, because if you're a debater, the strong chances are that you're the kind of person who likes to be right as well. But like Bob said to me once, there's no point winning the argument if by doing so you're losing the soul of the person who you're trying to help. So it's about tempering and thinking of the bigger picture. I mean, God's got the bigger picture, certainly.
Okay, so apologetics, you're finding you feel quite adept in it now. You've been you're doing it for quite a few years. You're
and I've studied theology since then.
All right.
With an academic institution. So not that doesn't equip me better for the commission, but it means that I have, in my own mind, an added authority in as much as I can draw from sources other than the Bible. Not that I ever need to, in terms of the truth is the Bible, but if someone hasn't got that presupposition, then of course I can appeal to logic and critical reasoning and just secular tools of the trade, as it were.
Okay, let's go the other direction now. Let's go to polemics.
Yes.
So those, you have found that many of the best questions that they throw at you about the Bible and about Jesus, usually if you just open up your Bible, you'll see the context.
Yeah.
They've misquoted it, they haven't looked at the whole reference, they've not looked at the verse before, verse after, or the answers are there, you just didn't know them, but a week later you did.
There's seeming contradictions as well, but they're not. Things, just off the top of my head, the most recent one, not that I've just heard it, but the differences between the gospel accounts of Judas, between Luke and I think it's Matthew, and they say, well, it's completely different. One, he falls forward headlong, and the other he's hanged from a tree. And yet Luke is a doctor, and if you were hanging from a tree in the heat for a few days, you would eventually fall and your guts would spill out because of the bloating. And
it's looking at two different time sequences.
Yeah, and it's looking at what the writer is, who the writer is as a person. Luke, like I say, has got a medical background. He's going to notice the intestines, not that someone else wouldn't, but to note them in a way that would vastly differ from a tax collector.
Okay, so the next other side is, what about
that
Islam?
they can sound very good when they're put to people who are Christian but not in the business of arguing. They think, oh my gosh, that sounds like two different stories.
That's an old one. That we I remember we used to get back in the 1990s.
Just someone asked me it the other day, and
really?
Yeah.
Here's on the other foot though, going towards Islam. What do you feel are some of the best arguments against Islam? What are some of the best polemical arguments?
Okay, so in terms of efficacy with Muslims, using their own standards that they have decreed, like there is no contradiction in the Quran. That's one of the best one. There are, some of them are in the same, like ayah, like it'll have a comma and then it contradicts itself. So in terms of putting a chink in their armour, they've always been taught there are no contradictions. It's clear and concise and whatever. But yeah, that it's perfect in every way. It's a direct revelation of God. So if you can show enough I've got reams of them if anyone wants any. Like literally, they're 10 a penny. And some of them are very powerful. And once you get that in, if they accept it intellectually, then you can.
This is a friendly bee just coming around saying hello.
You say
he wants your tea.
Yeah, he can't have it.
Coffee, sorry.
Yeah, I'll put that over there. Yeah, so contradiction, only because of the Islamic claim that there is no contradiction. Also, the perfect preservation was an Islamic claim. Nobody foisted that upon them as an impossible standard. So those contradictions, and then I kind of moved forward into, because you can just reel them off. Then what's actually important in terms of, because you can make atheists out of Muslims pretty easily actually, but they're still going to hell. You're bringing them off the Titanic and leaving them in the water.
So you want to bring them the gospel.
Yes. So then I would say if they they've yet to leave, but they're now thinking, oh, not too perfect, then is the direct contradictions between the Bible and the Quran, because those are more pronounced, certainly, if you believe Allah's claim that he is the God who revealed the Bible and stuff like that. Then you can say, well, how come he forgot this bit? How come he says the opposite of that part, but God doesn't change and God is, those kind of arguments. And then the linguistic ones, like the imperfection of his revelation, just the humanness of his portrayal. I could literally, once, a friend of mine and we took one or two ayah, and we spent 2 hours on a video just picking it up, just decimating it. Like, there were so many differing ways that it was outrageously nonsensical, and that was just like accidental, really. We just carried on filming.
No.
So
You've not taken a course on Islam yet, have you?
no, I described myself initially as a polemicist, as opposed to an evangelist, certainly, although the Holy Spirit I do find myself take it up, as it were. And I always think, oh, that sounded good, I wonder what I was talking about. Like, I just feel it come over me. But I always liked arguing and liked being right and liked winning arguments. So
where have you
didn't take
learned
much
all
of
this material about the contradictions,
I
and
see.
about the preservation,
So,
and about all these
initially, when I was being
the internal contradictions?
initially when I was being, I'll say pressured, to put it kindly, to become a Muslim or to accept this, what I like to call twaddle, I made a point, just me. I don't even think there was internet really at that time, maybe a little bit. But yeah, I just made a point of reading the Quran, as painful as that was, and coming up with mainly at that point it was contradictions between the Bible and the real God that I knew. Well, I didn't know him very well at that time, but the real God, or the Christian God, and this other stuff. So I started off with that, and I'm naturally quite cynical, sarcastic, and before Jesus, definitely. And so I didn't need to. And then when YouTube came along, certainly watching Speakers Corner debates was brilliant, because I would always, every single one, I would learn something, or not always learn it, but just consider it as valid criticism. I think, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way. Like, if this is true, that kind of vein. And people such as yourself, Bob, Rob Christian Prince. Oh, I love that man. Like, I used to have the time to listen to the 2-3 hours, and also his irreverence for the subject was a blessing to me, because he just doesn't give not even one hoot. So, and the potato thing was comical. So yeah, I just thought, all right, it's not the best delivery if you're not behind a computer screen and you are in front of people, but the fact that there's humour, and I realised that an encyclopedic knowledge of it is impossible, because there are so many thousands of hadiths and thousands of tafsir and interpretations, and it's just, I feel like it's a satanic attempt to just flood the world with disinformation. But you can't be an expert in all areas of it, but you don't need to be. You just need a good few contradictions, a good few discrepancies between the real God and that, and then away you go. Just take it as you come.
So it looks like the contradictions, the historical anachronisms, the scientific errors.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. Yeah, so the biblical versus Quranic, Quran versus Quran, and also world history, such as the crucifixion even. Like, no one else is saying it didn't happen. So yeah, and your research on actual history and Islamically portrayed history. So
the origins.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Terrific stuff. Listen, thank you so much for these sets of episodes. Are you going to put them up on your channel?
Yes, definitely.
And I'm putting them up on the J Show.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
resurrecting the J Show again. And
Nice.
you'll be one of the first.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
We should. I had a live stream booked in with you for so long, and it was my fault, everyone. But yeah, we have to get back to some regularity. But you're so busy.
This is nice that we're both in London together. I don't live in London anymore. For those of you who don't know, I left 5 years ago, I guess. But my wife and I are back because our son just got married, and so Kay said, if you're in town, let's go to the British Library and let's knock off a few of these episodes. So that's what we're doing. These are them. And it's been good I wanted to walk you through your experience, your why you came, what you've seen in the last 3 to 4 years, and some of the arguments that you have found to
There's
be.
one other thing that I would mention. So you If anyone's unaware, Jay has got, I think it's like the first, he'll let me know in a minute, but academic courses. So I found that taking theology at university was everything I've ever done, God has made it like a Romans 8:28, of benefit to me in my polemicizing and apologetics and theology. But in terms of like a unique, often people like to be taught something to then replicate, and Jay is involved in delivering actual polemics and apologetics specifically.
You're talking about the MAPI course.
Yes, I am. Yeah,
Master of Arts in Apologetics and Polemics.
Yes, which is
the first
kind
in the
of
world.
Unprecedented, exactly.
This is the first, and you're right. And this is not just for academics, by the way.
Yeah, no, I might have just played it up a little bit. For those of you who don't know, we did agree. I agreed to put together the entire degree. It's a degree program. It's 10 courses, 8 weeks each one. Takes 2 years to get all the way through them. But it's for those who want it for a master's degree, you can get a certificate. For a master's degree, you actually get the degree if you finish it, obviously. Yeah, you don't just get it as you walk in. Yeah.
But I agreed to do this degree with the understanding that people who don't want to get the degree but just want to hear the material, show up for the lectures and receive the PowerPoints. That is there for them as well. People like you. So if anybody who wants it for personal enrichment, we call them PE students.
Yes.
They only pay $200 for the entire course.
That's amazing.
And you get all 8 lectures, plus you get all the PowerPoints. Yeah. Now we're up to 80 lectures, obviously, because it's 10 courses. And that's available for any of you who want it, and it comes to you because it comes by Zoom.
Yes.
So,
I would advise anyone considering, experience, like come to Speaker's Corner. Don't come down maybe with like in a crusader-y kind of, like just come and feel it out and
watch
see.
To begin with.
Exactly.
Look for Kay, look
definitely.
for Huttoon, look for Bob.
Come out for food with us afterwards, and we're happy to. We had 2 people.
You go out and have some coffee and then some food afterwards.
You say coffee, I say gin and tonic, but yes.
Gin and tonic.
Yeah.
And you have some
We
food.
had 2 first-timers last. It was excellent. The guy had committed to Christ last year. He'd said that our videos were like a part of that journey. I was so touched and everything. Yeah, and he brought his wife along, and they'd come all the way down to London from a different part of England, and that was really touching and lovely. So I was really pleased to have been able to just, because oftentimes mainly Muslims, they'll say, well, what's the point anyway? How many people are you actually converting? Like as if it's a numbers game. And I say, but there's plenty.
Yeah,
they don't see it.
They film everything you do. You film it. That's the difference. That when I was there was no film because we didn't have smartphones then.
And that way they can say, I didn't say that. And you're like, I just say rewind. Just rewind the tape.
It's right there.
Yeah,
You're
exactly,
in black and white.
Yeah.
So now it's filmed. It's put up on your channel, which is K
Soco Films. Soco Films.
SOCO Films.
Soldier of Christ Online.
Soldier of Christ Online. And that Soco Films has its own Bob the Builder.
Yes, so there's Soco Films, which is the main channel, JC's channel. Not Jesus Christ as well, but the other JC. And then Bob has his own channel, Bob of Speaker's Corner, potentially. If you put that in, you'll find him. And then I've got K Soco Films, and I've got a smaller one as well because I was demonetized arbitrarily, strangely, because there was something true about Islam in one of my videos. There's always true stuff, but this was unappreciated by YouTube. So they demonetized, so I made another smaller channel just as a means of being able to still communicate, because going back to the courses, for the other 6 days, not so much at the moment, but I put a video every day.
So
and
K Soco Films is your main channel.
Yes.
What's the other secondary
The other one
channel?
is K Soco Films. This time it's personal. It's a bit of a long one.
Okay.
But yeah,
right.
You'll find it in the About section of my main channel. But yeah, so I teach apologetics and polemics and sometimes church history. So I've done a small series, and it's ongoing, of inspirational historical Christian women, because they got a bit whitewashed in the medieval era.
You also talk a lot about persecution around the world.
Oh, I'm so pleased you said that. So I prayed for an additional focus. When I got to Speaker's Corner, I didn't have my own channel at that time, and I was thinking, what can I do more? I felt an urgency. I still feel it. I don't want to get to Judgment Day and say, oh, do you know what? I just didn't really have the time and didn't think of it. And I have cold sweats about having to justify why I didn't try harder and get more stuff done. So I asked the Lord for another focus, and it was, I don't want to say oppressive, but I'm going to. Like, I got hit. There you go. That's the World Watch List. I got an oppressive...
50 countries where following Jesus costs the most.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started. Afghanistan's number one at the moment, but Nigeria is number one in the world in terms of being brutally murdered for Christ. But yeah, the Lord put it on my heart. I saw some images, real life images of a little Nigerian girl with a machete. She was dead, clearly dead, hanging out of her head, and women like just all like practically beheaded but still alive, like, you know, machete attacks and stuff. And I was brought into it. I started praying about it. There was a pastor that, if you put in Nigerian pastor kidnapped, you get thousands of unique search results. It's very commonplace. But this guy, God put him into my like peripheral, and he was so impressive. Like he was having his captor video, like they're behind him with the flags, and he did die eventually. But he was praying for his captors, and so like at peace with his situation, and he was just inspirational. And when I couldn't find the video and search engined Nigerian pastor kidnapped, I was so sickened. Like, and then God really just hammered it home. Like for about a month, I would wake up thinking about these images, go to sleep with it. In the night, like it would be in my dreams. God definitely said, that's the one, and like I'd like you to focus on that. So I have done, and it's. If you click on my channel, I can provide like minimum 5 a day if I wanted to, and I have to sift through so many stories to weirdly decide which are the most impactful, because it's in the last 30 days there's been about 200 Islamically inspired terror or honor killings or physical attacks on Christians.
It's very real, and you want to make sure
Oh,
people
definitely,
are aware
because
of
the mainstream, you could be skipping through your life thinking that Islam was really persecuted. Like,
those stories do make it to the the main
because
channels,
of the narrative.
but the Christians' persecution don't make it.
No, it's literally when there was a shooting in a mosque. It's awful. Don't get me wrong. That was in New Zealand. While the world was focusing on the premier or the prime minister walking around in a headscarf, embarrassing herself, Nigeria, there'd been a massacre of 200 people. Literally the day before, Christians, macheted, chopped up, set on fire. You know, you name it. You would never hear of it if it wasn't for the Christians and charitable organisations reporting on it. So Open Doors, they produced one of our first videos together was about the persecution, or one of the most impactful ones. And yeah, so they publish a top 50 every year, which is horrific reading, but still necessary. And then there's an ongoing compilation, Christian Concern, International Christian Concern. They have news stories that I often read at Speaker's Corner, or Raymond Ibrahim. Robert Spencer's excellent. He and David are now collaborating, doing like a Jihad Watch thingy. Raymond Ibrahim is fantastic. Like, he compiles monthly, bless him, and I sometimes read through them with his permission on camera, and I very rarely get through it without at least saying what utter tramps these people. Like, I just start getting personalised, because it's heartbreaking. Like, you have to detach from it, but I'm not. So
that's Kay in a nutshell. She hits many different tangents. She is involved in many different areas.
Yeah.
And my interest in you is because of Speaker's Corner, because we share that in common, and we know each other.
And because you love me, and we're buddies, obviously.
Well, but I mean, as far as the
goes without saying.
As far as why we're doing these interviews, is because of Speaker's Corner, and that's what we've done now. We wanted to get your background, we wanted to get your history, we wanted to see where you've come in the last 3 to 4 years, where you're going, what are some of the main ideas, what are they engaging us with, and what are we engaging them with. Been terrific having you. Thanks so much.
I'd like to, anyone who wants to come and have a look at my channel, there's no pressure, but obviously subscribe and press the bell and do all the
We're going to have it right down. If you look down below, you'll see the name down there.
I like seeing new people. It's nice because we have a little sense of community, and I oftentimes when I'm premiering something, I'll be in the live, like I'm watching it at the same time, and I like being involved in the live. I just like it.
One thing I love about Kay is not only the fact that she is involved and engaged, she actually puts her face above the parapet. She's doing that both on YouTube, but she also goes down to Speaker's Corner, and she goes down there with a camera and with a mic and takes on the Muslims, many of them who are huge bullies, and you hold your own. That's because
Yeah.
you have the street smarts, and so you do
I've
have
got
a unique,
Jesus.
You do have a unique personality.
And my mouth, yeah.
And you've got
definitely.
a great gift of the gab.
Everyone's really pleased it's unique, Jay. They're like, can't take two of them. I'm only joking. So yeah, maybe come and have a look at one of my Speakers Corner debatey ones first, and then, because sometimes the church history, and I try and deliver it as interestingly as possible. But
And then comment at the bottom, and really
yeah,
encourage
say
her.
I'm here from
Encourage
Jay's.
what she's doing, because we do need it. She needs to hear that. It's good for all of us to know.
It's lovely when people
be
are
honest about
positive.
it. Be honest.
You don't have to agree, but sometimes the capital letters entitlement, you just think, oh, go away. But with love and Jesus and stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks ever so much. It's
God bless you.
it's been a pleasure, an absolute
Kay
pleasure.
and Jay, over now.
God bless. Bye bye.
Right, this is August 2022. I'm here with my good friend Kay. Kay, we've known each other, what, a few years.
Not giving away my age or anything.
I'm not giving you away your
while.
age. A while. Back in the 2014, 15. When did you start coming to Speaker's Corner?
That's a very good question. Regularly, every week with a commitment to Christ would have been, I want to say 2019 or 18.
Okay, so before, but we knew each other before that,
Yeah,
because
I
I
knew
left
Bob
in,
also.
I left in 2017.
Yeah.
The
And then Bob
week
took
before
over from you.
Bob came.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Hutton took over from me.
And well, no, I didn't mean officially. I just meant in terms of having a loudmouth person in the park. Because then when Bob left,
They're both loudmouth.
I came. Well, that's true. That's true.
But in two different ways. Yeah. So Bob came looking for me the week after I had left. Missed each other. Terrible timing. It wasn't until the next year that I met him, and then I met you as well. We went out and we had coffee together, and I think that's where I suggested to you that you get a YouTube channel, and you did.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about that.
Okay, so initially when I was first at the park, it's a part of my, I guess, it was a pretty dramatic recommitment to Christ that I had, and some spiritual unpleasantness, I guess, prior to that. And then I did a bit of a Martin Luther, I suppose. I pleaded and said, no, if you can just be with me through this, then I will, boldly proclaim and not be ashamed of the gospel, etc. But I didn't want to rush into it or be self-willed, so I made that commitment, and then I carried on praying about it consistently. And then an atheist friend of mine said, Kay, can you do me a massive favour, just out of the blue? And I said, yeah, sure. Please come to a place, it's called Speaker's Corner. And I was like, okay, because I'd been praying about going to Speaker's Corner. And then initially, it's horrific if it happens to anyone. The only comments I ever saw were on the Muslim channels before I met JC, Soko Films. That's a trial by fire. So I tried not to read them. And then I came into contact with JC. I knew him already through Bob, and from there, for around 6 months or 10 months, I didn't have a channel because I was just focusing on, studying, not real life, other life stuff, and quite happy to actually read some pleasant comments. And then I thought of what you'd said, and some other people said it also, and I just felt that there were 6 other days in every week that I could be reaching out to people, because I felt so far away from Jesus at one point that actually, without being overly dramatic, videos of you and Bob, even though Bob and I have a challenging, like a discussion life as it were, however, his videos, yours and Soko's particularly, literally saved my life, my spiritual life and my physical life at one point. And I wanted to be able to, in some small way, replicate that for other people, because I feel like my style is differing in as much as I see some Christian channels and they're lovely people and I know them, but I couldn't ever visualize myself like sitting in a pub with them or having a laugh. They seem pretty like staid and not pious, but like
Not
decent, love. Exactly.
You're from the street.
Exactly,
you
Jay.
feel comfortable there.
Well, yeah, I try to. I modify my interactions with people based on how comfortable they seem. So if they seem uptight weirdly, I'll be less, I'll be more street, as it were, because I think it puts people at their ease if they realise you're not levitating to the bathroom in the morning, that you've actually got struggles yourself.
You represent a demographic in Christianity that's not well served. More than that, there aren't many spokespeople like you. I think you're unique. You involved
So does
in some
Jesus.
ways are unique.
Thank
Because
you,
you do come from that environment. You come from the streets. You come from where the majority of British people live.
Yeah.
But they don't understand Christianity at all.
No, that's
And
it.
when they think of Christianity, they think of cold churches.
Yeah.
They think of
Boring sermons.
boring sermons,
Yeah.
put you to sleep. They don't see how it's actually lived out in practice in the real life, in the
that's
real
it.
world, which is what you do. And in some ways, one of the attractions of your channel and attractions of your background is you come from that. You're able then to talk to a camera, or in your case, the laptop, and you're able to unpack from your perspective who Christ is to you, what
for sure.
Jesus means for you.
Yeah.
And one of the things you've really latched on is Speaker's Corner is a perfect venue for that.
Definitely.
Now, Speaker's Corner, I've had a different experience than you have had. I was there 25 years prior to your coming. Back when I was there were very few Christians. Now there are quite a few.
Yes,
And you
thank
make up
God.
quite a big group, actually. And I see fewer and fewer Muslims there.
Well,
Now,
yeah. Oh, maybe from your time, yeah, certainly.
Then when I was there. When I was there, there would be 10 ladders,
Yeah.
all with Muslims on them. I don't see one ladder.
No, that's right, yeah.
Where are all the Muslim ladders? They've all gone.
Just Usman, that's it. He's still asking the same
And he doesn't
questions
have
he was
much-
asking when you were there.
And he doesn't have much of a crowd.
Only panto season. Yeah.
When we were there in the 1990s, they would dominate the corner. They would be almost 10 to 1. And the one meaning the few Christians who were stupid enough to stay around. Now, I would suggest that the Muslims are on the retreat.
Oh, yes, certainly.
Certainly they are. Okay,
Yeah.
explain that to me. Because now you've been there so you've been there, what,
Let me
3
hold
years?
this for you, like in the middle. Sorry, Cran.
Well, actually, I'm louder, so I'd rather have it on you.
No way. I'd never noticed.
My
You're
voice
very
is a
kind.
little bit louder than yours. Now, explain it to me. When you first came, you were full of trepidation.
I was certain that God wanted me there. Absolutely certain that I felt like He was sending me there. So I had it. It wasn't necessarily trepidation, but it was, I guess, yeah, but not really fear-based. I haven't ever pleased God. I haven't ever. I felt spiritually oppressed there. I felt like a darkness and a heaviness, often. But I haven't ever felt afraid, even when frightening things are happening. Initially I would be fatigued. I would lose my voice for about 24 hours every Monday, and by around Wednesday I would start to feel all right, and then I'd think, oh my gosh, it's tomorrow, I have to go through this again. It was really draining physically, not spiritually, but there was a lot to unpack and a lot of animosity and I wasn't ready really for that kind of feeling. And then my brother, I love that boy, he said, well, you're praying about it specifically. And I was like, not really. So once I started doing that, as I walk into the park, I pray. And since then, I haven't, experienced any negative ramifications for myself. In terms of Islam on the retreat, what I see is that...
Okay, before we get into that,
sorry.
back up just to one more question on that.
Sure.
Okay, so you feel a lot of people feel intimidated when they come to the corner. You didn't, except the very first.
I thought I was going to be intimidated by the cameras. In my mind, I'd always, prior to that, I have maybe 2 photos from my childhood that in my possession that I couldn't get to the family copies and throw them away. I didn't like cameras. I didn't like having my photo taken, my voice on recording. I know you can't believe it.
Well, look at you.
Exactly.
Here you are right now.
As I walked in, that was
8
lifted.
minutes today, no problem.
God literally lifted it there and then, because I had a half a plan to hide behind the camera people and just but that just evaporated. And I found a boldness. I mean, I've always been bold, but it wasn't wholly mine. It was wholly her mine, but it wasn't completely me. If you see, I managed to keep my patience when when I was watching it back, I was thinking, oh my gosh,
yeah, okay,
it's definitely not me. So yeah, I Yeah, it's been a
Well, you have the
brilliant
gift of the gab.
experience.
You're able to kind of take on and flow with whatever is happening,
Yeah.
whether it's the situation, whether it's the person, or whether it's the subject. I find that you can pretty much talk about almost any subject now.
Yes.
And
yeah.
that has done you well over the years. We're talking about 3 or 4 years now that you've been doing that. You're going to continue going back, and you can continue
Certainly.
engaging. What are the high points, or what are the maybe the high points too, but some of the high discussions, the best discussions you feel you've had, or that you can remember the most?
Yes. Okay, so in terms of impact and trying to unentangle people from Islamic ignorance and belief. I don't mean ignorance in the belief, I mean the ignorance of the true facts of Islam, if you see what I mean. Because I find that the average Muslim on the street, they say, really? It doesn't say that. And I go, like when I'm charmingly cornering them or something. But one of the high points in terms of impact was about 2 or 3 years ago, Mohammed Hijab, during a discussion on Surah 65:4, divorcing of girls/women, just said outright, well, of course, yeah, if you just go by the Quran only, it's permissible to sleep with minors. And I was like, in my mind, as he said it, I was like, I couldn't believe he'd said it, but I managed to remain pretty composed. And that I feel, and then he subsequently admitted it again in not so many words. And because of his, the massive amount of people who follow him, who are majority Muslim, I would say, that was a blessing, because I thought, if he's saying it, for one, they're going to believe it, and for two, to be so candid about it,
so you really
is
caught
amazing.
him. You really caught him on the Quran. The Quran, he
Yeah.
had to support it. You couldn't walk away from it.
Yes.
He didn't know you knew the verse, and that was
now that's the thing. Initially, all of the Dawah were pleased to speak to me, because they tend to go for passers-by, and in the titles it will be Christian preacher set, and this woman's just come from Tesco's. She may not even
They're
be a
on their way
Christian.
to see the music
Exactly.
venue, which is there in the park. Usually it's the Christians on their way to the park to
Yes.
see some music.
Yeah,
or,
and when they say Christian, they mean white, usually.
Right.
Like, it's just generic. They must be Christian. They're not in a hijab. But yeah, so firstly, they were quite keen to speak with me.
thinking you were one of these tourists.
And then, well, maybe, or just thinking, oh, just a girl. I don't know. They just wanted to try. And after a little while, they became a bit more reticent. Yeah, so...
Now, is that
yeah.
because you're a girl, or is that because you're knowledgeable?
No, it's because I kept making them look foolish, or making them look...
So knowledgeable.
Yeah, without boastfulness. I think
Being a girl, was that a disadvantage?
No, it's an advantage, I feel, because there's less testosterone, there's less posturing, and I can get away with saying things. Certainly, I use humour, which is a vastly differing approach, like I intimated, between maybe... I mean, Hatton's quite funny, but that's not her... It's not my main goal either, but I diffuse situations with humour, because it seems so laughable sometimes that you can't remain angered if some people do a jolly good job of it. But generally I get away with saying things, and oftentimes I feel like they don't actually get the joke, but the people watching do. So it can come across as unkind.
Isn't that who your audience is?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to pick up on.
Camera, because a lot of people may not know that.
Yeah, so people say, why do you speak to Modine? Why? Hashim's never going to change. These are like a member, loosely members of the Dawah. And the reason is, and I figured this out very early on, I genuinely think it's... I mean, I know that it's not me who's going to convert anyone. I just have to make a chink in their armor of ignorance, or I don't know, hatred for God, and then the Holy Spirit will get in. But I know that I would never have had the hundreds of thousands of views that I had via the Dawah channels in places such as Pakistan or Saudi Arabia, or predominantly majority Muslim countries, without these people. And that's a part of my prayer when I walk in, that the person who needs to hear what I have to say will eventually watch. And I don't know when it's going to be, but the thing about the internet is it's kind of around forever. So the Christians that I know now, my channel members, my friends and stuff, one of them said to me last night, yeah, I take notes from your stuff. And I was like, you could just ask me. I couldn't believe it. I don't know, it was edifying. But Yeah, so I know that the Muslims or the humans, as I like to call them, who need to hear it will hear it. And sometimes you can hear stuff for years, and it's only when you're teachable or when your ears are opened that it's beneficial. So I pray for Hashim. Like, I hope that his knowledge of the Bible isn't condemning him even more because of his, duplicitousness in exegeting it. But it's not for him that I'm debating him. It's for everybody else who's there and
that's
can hear
something
me.
that we have picked up from the very beginning. We knew this, and I've been trying to tell anybody that comes to Speaker's Corner, the guy that or the guys, plural, that you're engaging with are not the ones you're trying to convince.
Certainly.
Remember, they're not going to be convinced. They're there. They're professional. They come every week.
Yeah.
That they're there to try to find a chink in your armor, to try to come up with some type of one-liner that will shut down the argument.
Yeah, it's disingenuous
and then they can yell
anyway.
exactly. And then they can put it up online and they have conquered. That's all they're there for.
And
but
they dishonestly edit, as not all of them, but oftentimes those channels, they
if you come up with a good response, that will be edited out.
Yeah.
So really, your audience is the people who are listening, and the more engaging you are, the better the topic, the more theatrical you can be, the more the larger the crowd you're going to get.
Yeah.
It goes with the territory.
Yes.
And that's one of you've picked that up because I've seen that with the way you've been able to engage with people and confront them and hold them and not let them walk away, keep them back. Bob is able to do that. He has a louder voice. He can do that just with the strength of his voice. Huttoon is able to do that just because, they do walk away from her quite a bit, and her voice.
Well, sometimes that's preferable, though, to be fair, than when they hang around. So
and in walking away, you can use that to your advantage.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because her material is so devastating and so damaging, and in some ways she is able to bring things to the table that others are not able to do yet. But this idea of Speaker's Corner has been your craft for 3 going on 4 years, something you will continue to do. I'm going to bring up this to a conclusion now, and what I want to talk about then in the next episode is what is it the content that you're using that you find is the best or not the best. So let's go ahead, say goodbye now. This is Kay and Jay. As you can see, we're at the British Library, back behind the fellow over here.
It's a very unflattering angle of Newton. Bless him.
With his compass.
Yeah.
But you all know British Library. We love British Library. This is where I did a lot of my research, and this is the best place for us to do interviews on a beautiful day here in August 2022.
All right. God bless you, Jay. Thank you.
Over now.
All right. Bye.
Right, we're back again. This is here at the British Library on a tepid August morning. Well, actually, it's just coming the afternoon. I've asked Kay to come down here and just to unpack some of her own ministry, to unpack some of her background. We did a episode looking at the history of coming down to Speaker's Corner. What I would like to do is now ask you about the different ideas that you have used. Thinking back in the last 3 or 4 years, what ideas are you found have been the most cogent? Now, obviously, Speaker's Corner is more than just Islam and Christianity.
Certainly.
You've got atheists, humanists,
Flat Earth
homosexuals, Flat Earth Society, Nation
Feminists.
of Islam.
Yep.
You name it. It's a bastion of freedom of speech.
Excellent.
And you said they just celebrated the 200th year?
150th anniversary of the Act of Parliament that enshrined the right to hold forth in that place.
Okay, so that's 150 years.
Yes.
So 150 years. It's been around longer than that.
Yes, certainly.
Closer to 200
Yes.
as far as its actually usage as a place
Yeah,
for...
because of the, there are 2 theories, but there's a hangman's gallows. The site of the Tyburn tree is very close, just by Edgware Road Junction. So people would have their last words and their,
Well, that was what I was told, that
Yeah.
every Sunday they would have the executions, and
fun
crowds
for all
would
the
come.
family.
Because
Yep.
there was no TV, there was no radio. This was the
That's
entertainment
it.
of the week.
Such
And
a
you'd
shame.
come there with your sandwiches, and you'd watch the execution. But before the execution, what I've been told is that the accused were they were given a soapbox,
Yes.
and they were allowed to give their last defense as a way of trying to obviate their crime.
Yeah.
It never worked.
Or
They still got
contrition
executed.
or something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
And they would give their last defense, and then they would be marched up, they were hanged, but the boxes were still there, and so different guys would get up and they would start, the crowds were there, and so you'd have your politicians or your
Opportunists,
preachers
yeah.
who would just start preaching, and that's why it became Preacher's Corner, because of the crowds that were left behind. They had the whole afternoon to to listen to these crackpots, or in some cases, well serving and also very eloquent speakers. Now today, we have carried on from that. It's still near the same place. It's still back there on the corner of Hyde Park, right there at Marble Arch.
Yes.
And you have been going to 3-4 years. I went for 25 years, and I think Mansour beats me. He's been there for about 30 years. He's still going down there. Mansour, good old Mansour. But some of the comments, some of the things, some of the topics that come up, it's changed enormously since I was there. I left in 2017. We're 2022, 5 years down the road. Going back just a few weeks ago, getting back up on the ladder, not only physically I don't see many Muslims anymore. When I was there, they dominated. It was almost, we thought about 10-1 in the afternoon, not in the mornings, but in the afternoon. And we were always the minority, surrounded by enormous amount of Muslims, and it was always attack against us. Their speakers were not talking about Britain, they were not talking about politics, they were talking about Jesus, the Trinity, the divinity of Jesus, the authority of Scripture. And I was always curious, why were they always attacking Christianity when we were so few in number and we weren't on the offense then? We had nothing. There was no polemics back then. I knew of no polemics. There was no training for such a thing. There was no school that gave us any idea on polemics. Today, yes, but not back then.
Yeah.
In the 1990s, 1992, I started. And so today, as I went back there a few weeks ago, I looked around and I remember at least 10 speakers, Muslim speakers, on at least 10 to 12, sometimes 13 ladders with their talibés around them. So they'd have their groups around them. Talibés means students, or they would be teachers, ustads, or khalifs, or pirs, or whatever name they gave, sheikhs. They would all have their teachers around them, and you'd have to push your way through their students to get to the speaker. Yeah. And they would punch you, they would elbow you. I would come back with bruises on my midriff. It was not a pleasant time. I didn't see any of that, and I don't see any of that. What's going on, and what's happened?
Okay, so in terms of, I feel like it's potentially a little skewed in as much as, I was thinking as you were speaking, the Queen, I suppose, thinks the world is full of like the smell of fresh paint and red carpet. Everywhere she goes, there are people there to see. I'm not comparing you to Her Majesty, and yet I feel that when you turn up, there are more Christians there by dint of they would love to see you and hear what you have to say. On a regular week, I don't see any decrease. I mean, from your time, I can't say, but the percentages of Muslims is still much higher. If not more.
Okay.
But the blessing is that the Christians who are there, not all of them are comfortable on camera or public, but there are, studious and determined and like quiet people in the background engaging with individuals off camera, which is sometimes more efficacious because there's no like self-consciousness in terms of people are going to hear me say the wrong answer, or like for the Muslim at least, or for the atheist, or for the crazy person. So I see that the Muslims who are there, though, oftentimes are not religious, and I can fully accept that Islamically religious, in their private lives, they're still going to school, half of them, and they potentially smoke cigarettes and are not, studying the Quran.
Westernized.
Yes, they're not only westernized, they're like I was going to say idiots. They're just young kids, and I feel that there's an encouragement by certain older regulars for them to come, because once they turned up, Hatun was being poked and prodded and kicked and spat on and pulled to the ground, and it seemed highly coincidental. I feel like they're just rent a mob. They just get, it's not hard to go and see if Hatun's there. It's harder than seeing if I'm there, because you have to bend down and look through people. But they turn up with a view not for discourse or genuine discussion. Yes, for intimidation purposes and insults, and very childish, not very funny insults. I get offended, not because I'm free speech certainly, but I get offended because their heckling isn't very good. So I'm like, I very much appreciate comedy and laughter, and I'm like, if you're going to do it, boys, at least be funny, something to bounce off of.
Just something we can smile about.
Yeah. So it has changed even since I've been there. But it modulates between a very negative spiritual energy on some weeks, just seemingly unrelated to how many people are there or what's. I haven't quite worked that one out yet. Maybe it's my spiritual frame of mind, I don't know. And other weeks it's seems that nothing can go wrong, like every conversation seems edifying and hopeful, and because obviously you don't.
So the atmosphere changes week by week by week.
Certainly. Okay. But the demographics, I mean, in the 80s, because in my mind, prior to maybe 10, 20 years ago, if ever anyone would have said Speaker's Corner, I had an image of one man on a box somewhere, maybe in an old-fashioned suit, like a crazy person, just ranting, and people kind of maybe making a joke or listening intently. I didn't imagine that it was a collective, I just thought there was a place in London where every single day someone was on a box. And I didn't appreciate the global impact of, YouTube wasn't a thing then, but I've seen videos from the 80s. There's one on my channel and it's so charming. It's mainly political, though there are Christians there, and it's very sociable. People are very well-mannered and polite. They're standing quietly listening, and there's the heckling, but the heckling seems kind of not prearranged, but they all know each other, and it's not malicious in as much as you think.
No, that would
there's
be
never going to be a fight breaking out. Yes,
it was not like that in the 1990s.
Yeah.
It's never been like that ever since the smartphone was invented. Once the smartphone was invented, and once
people were less smart.
The little boxes that you see, for those out there who don't know, you'll see everybody's wearing little boxes. Those are actually microphones, and they're very good because they're directional. We have a microphone right here on K, nothing like the box ones, because they're Bluetooth right to the camera, and they're directional, so only your voice gets in there. It shuts everybody else
I do it all the time. I say I've got the mic, though. I put it like that. They're busy talking nonsense, and I'm like, no, everyone can only hear me.
Right.
So that's pretty
so
funny.
The technology has really taken over and has made it a much more accessible to the whole world.
Yes.
It wasn't accessible in the 1990s. You knew that whenever you were down there and you were on a ladder, you had to cane your own crowd, and the only people that are going to hear you is that crowd. Now you know that thousands can hear you, millions can hear you all over the world. So that has changed.
Revolutionized,
What is fascinating to me, I've been trying to tell Hatun this, and I've been trying to tell a lot of you this, when you get on a ladder, you have an awful lot more control than when you're on the ground.
I tried to change a light bulb recently, and I couldn't take my other hand off. I had to hold on to the ladder, and it was only a tiny step. I don't know if I'd feel. I like to know my feet are on the floor, because then I've got less way to go if I get shoved over or pulled off. I could try.
Have you seen what happened whenever we're on the ladder?
Oh yeah, you get much more attention, and you have
your voice, you
more authority.
When you're on the ground, you have 10 guys around you. They're all
they
yelling
can drown
at once.
you out. Yes, certainly.
They can drown you out. Not only that, they control the agenda. You are at their behest. I've seen this with Hatun all the time. I kept on telling her, Hatun, get on a ladder. You then can pretty much pick and choose who you want to listen to.
Yes.
You choose who controls the narrative.
Sure. She used to do it more when with Godwin and Daniel, for instance, when they were working as a team.
So why have they gone off the ladder?
I feel like Godwin and Daniel, they don't attend at the moment. The focus for their ministry has certainly changed.
But why is Hatun not on the ladder?
I guess, I mean, I'm only surmising. I've never directly asked her, but I would imagine that the potential for injury may be a consideration. No, not that she's
touch you on the ladder.
That's not the case.
Rarely do you get touched on the ladder because you're so high profile.
That's true, but then she was stabbed in the face in front of the police.
On the ground.
Yeah, no, but in front of the police, I'm saying that's pretty high profile in where it should be.
Yeah, but it would have been much more difficult if she'd been on the ladder.
Yeah, certainly.
Well, I don't want
I don't know the answer, but I feel that you're more, there's something to be said for eye level, because it's more of it's a position of authority, certainly, and it's easier to control the crowd, but in terms of individual interactions, it's less domineering, I guess.
Sir, come forward. I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay, you come forward. We controlled who we were talking to.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not polemicizing your position. I'm just thinking of reasons why you can move away quicker if you're not on a ladder and surrounded by people also.
But who would want to if you have the agenda?
If the other person has a big knife, I say. You know what I mean? There's considerations.
How many times are knives used down there?
The former policeman who was actually cared about free speech, he was an excellent human being, but he was very good at his job. They do a sweep on Saturday nights and Sunday mornings, and they find like a high number of bladed
How many
articles.
people have been stabbed since you've been going there to Speaker's Corner?
There's been threats of stabbings and one stabbing that I know of, but that's
So
one too many.
In 3 years.
What?
And that
I
was
know
not
this
two.
is London, but that's still like 100% too many stabbings.
And
Yeah. But the thing is, that was incrementally. Once the poking is ignored by the police, and once the spitting and the broken bones
Listen,
and the,
I've been stabbed once. I've had my throat opened up. I've had a gun put to me, all on the ground. Not once while I was on the ladder.
Yeah.
When you're on the ladder, you're too high profile. Everything's on camera.
Abraham Lincoln was up in a. Anyway, the point is, I
There was no
agree
cameras
with.
back then.
I think it's better for you. I think it's very much about people's style. Also, I mean, maybe I'll try it and I'll never come down. Like I'll be carried around the ladder.
Even when you stopped and thought, when you thought about the old days, you thought about a person on a ladder
Oh,
speaking.
definitely, or a
Speaker's Corner
soapbox.
has always been on a soapbox.
Yes.
From the very beginning, 150 years of it.
Yes.
Why has that changed? And what is the reason for a soapbox? Because you gain
I
people's
think
attention.
maybe actually as well the societal shift to equality and microaggressions and not us per se focusing on this, but the thing of everybody's equal and you can't offend people, which it's laughable for Speaker's Corner because you will. Just people are there to be offended, like so they can. But yeah, that maybe there's something about that in terms of not seeming elitist, and also pictures are bad. You can't have a banner up. You can't have a stand with
Are you listening to this? Do you really believe this?
I'm giving you reasons that are not mine. I'm giving you potential reasons. No, people have been asked by the
Are
police
you saying
to
people
move
are
away.
on ladders because of equality?
No, just the generalised ethos of not. I can't think of the. Attempting to be.
If you're on a ladder, you're an elitist?
No, not an elitist, but you, by dint of body language and physical positioning, you have an assumed authority because you're able to call out of the crowd,
That's
like you
what
said.
Speaker's Corner is for.
I know. I'm not. I don't hold this
Speakers
position.
are created to bring down speakers.
I don't hold the position. You're asking me what do I think is the reasoning, and I'm giving you like generic. I mean, nowadays you can't say a woman's a woman. You can't say a man is somebody
at
born with a
Speaker's Corner.
penis. You can say it, but what I mean to say is someone will be offended. Like, you see? So, I'm just telling you how mad the world is in case you haven't caught on.
No, I'm aware of that. But I would not want to say that's the reason you don't get on a ladder.
I don't know.
Or
I'm
people don't
throwing
use ladders
out.
anymore.
Yeah, but I've never done a study of it. I never thought about it. Sometimes I walk past. I think I'm going to get up there. It's not my ladder.
Every time I come, and that's whenever I come to London. I was here last November. I came in July. I'll come in December. I tell Hatun, I'll come, but we're getting on a ladder. And she says, okay, I'll go get the ladders out of the garage. Then
Yeah.
she has to find them.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Carrying a ladder all the way. I mean, Usman, bless him, he's very dedicated. He carries it all the way there. But
John brings it. He brings it
Yeah.
every time. And I said, listen.
if they provided soapboxes, I feel that more people would use them.
Afterwards, I said, well, how do you think that went? She says, wow, a lot of people were listening. I said, look at all the cameras that are on us. Why do you think
definitely.
so many cameras are on us? Why so many people are listening? And look how much
Well,
content
it's easier
we got
to
at.
film you if you're on a ladder as well, because you can stand right at the back.
How much material did we get through?
Oh,
when I was in
hours.
November, you know how many films? You know how many films she made out of that 3-hour time?
Oh,
that
I
we
can
were on there?
imagine. Yeah.
33 films.
Excellent.
33 episodes. I said that was just one 3-hour period, all because we were on a ladder and we controlled the agenda. We decided where we wanted to go with it. We were the ones that even held up the pictures, and we controlled who we wanted to talk to.
Yes.
You can't do that on the ground. Anyhow, I think we made our point on this one, and it's really just to see the technicalities of where Speaker's Corner has gone. Unfortunately, in my view, it looks like
It's
a
downhill.
free-for-all now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Certainly.
It's a
yeah.
lot of yelling, and cacophony, and
There's a lot of-
personality.
Yes, there's a lot of not so much nowadays, but maybe 2 to 3 years ago, you could if you were from a bird's eye view, you just see all of a sudden the whole crowd will just like sway, and there's a fight or some violence
always a fight.
happening.
It's
Yeah,
always-
because people, for all they want to be able to speak freely, and they do, they want to control the other person's speech. Oftentimes, when they are unable to verbally defeat them, and tempers do flare, and when it's hot weather, just any old reason, people don't like to be made to look foolish in front of others, so they resort to violence. And I feel like a lot of it is spur of the moment, unplanned, and maybe the person is sorry, maybe they're not.
And listen,
But-
that's the theatre of Speaker's
Yes,
Corner, and that's
yeah.
not the attraction. I don't deny that. I'm just trying to think about as far as communicating the gospel or trying to communicate what your agenda is. To me, it's just a no-brainer. If you want to get your material across, if you want to get your ideas across, why not be in control of it?
Maybe I'll get some higher heels. With that, I'll meet you halfway.
Okay. Listen, this is Kay and Jay. We're going to disagree. No, we're not going to come to any conclusion on this.
I have no
But
firm
you've
opinion.
heard different points.
Yeah.
You decide who you think has the agenda on this one. Good on you. Terrific.
Yeah.
Jay and Kay, over now.
Ciao.